I hate it when people say that perfectionism keeps them from committing to doing things. This is a pet peeve of mine. When salespeople incessantly use your name in a conversation, Joel, how did this make you feel? Or like, oh yeah, Joel, like nobody talks like that.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking part in this immersive listening experience. A meaningful existence is a moving target that, no matter how close, will always be out of reach. We hope this message finds you with an outstretched hand. As we attempt to uncover complex truths, remember, life's toughest questions can be answered if we all just focus on one thing: being good people.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Good People episode 52. Today, my guest is me. For the 52nd episode of Good People, which marks the first year of consecutive weekly uploads, I will be doing a Q&A episode to answer questions in regards to all of the things that I have learned over doing the podcast for a year. Just a heads up, I have been asking all of these questions for Q&A episodes on my Instagram, which is at Coach Joel Sherman. So make sure if you don't follow me there, you head on over to Instagram, give me a follow. That way, next time we do this format of an episode, you can participate. Without further ado, we are going to jump right in. Question number 1 is, how have you applied what you have learned from guests in real life? The first one, and maybe it's because this is most recent. Actually, I have two things that are both most recent. Number one is my episode with Phil Reed on social media addiction. Talking to him made me really understand the actual weight that our reliance on social media and digital dependency has. And it's something that I think learning the truth of the fact that social media does negatively impact us in many, many ways has really helped me solidify that I don't want to be a slave to the compulsion that is checking social media, checking my phone, etc. And so I don't know if I've had a super profound change in that regard, other than I'm a little bit more cognizant of when I use my phone. I tend to find myself leaving it in the other room. Like when I have dinner, I tend to find myself reaching for the book instead of the phone. And that's something that I hope to continue to improve. But that's something that I've most recently noticed. I feel like I learned something from every episode. And one of my first instincts is always to go tell somebody about what I recently learned. And so, it is not lost on me the impact that this podcast has had on my life already. And that is probably the most recent example. Another one that I just started doing, this will be day 3 of this habit, but I just talked to Brock Covington. Him and I are about the same age. We have a lot of similar interests, and he is very well spoken, has a deep lexicon, and uses more nuanced and complex language that I really appreciated. And he shared that as he reads, he has a dictionary close by, and if he comes across a word that he doesn't know, he goes into the dictionary, finds it, reads it, and then writes it down word for word, the definition on a notebook. So where I read, I now have a dictionary and a notepad. And I don't just do this while I'm reading. I have tended to, over the last 3 days, just done a word a day, found a word that I came across in my reading, or maybe just picked one that seemed interesting that I wasn't quite sure about. And I write the word and the definition, and I'm more actively trying to use them in sentences. And that seems to have had a pretty cool impact so far. And I'm excited to, hopefully learn and use more nuanced language over the next, years of my life. Hopefully that will come out as me speaking and orating better on the show. Second question, a guest you want to talk to again. Ethan Schindler he's always my favorite. He's been on the show 3 times, and it's always fun to talk to him. He is a good friend of mine. I'm glad to have gotten to know him over the last year or two, and I guess a year, because I really met him just a couple weeks into the show, but always good to talk to him. But other than that was kind of an obvious one. I have him on the show all the time, is Adrian Bosman. I felt like on that episode that I recorded with him, I was a bit rushed for time. He had a hard out. We had a little technical thing in the middle that took a couple of minutes of our time. And instead of just having the conversation and accepting what was happening, I kind of try to force it all into one. And I think that that was a mistake. And I didn't do as well as I would have liked to. I was a bit nervous. But I think if I had the opportunity to talk to him again, I would do a much better job, and I would love the opportunity to do that. He said he would come back on, so we'll see. Least favorite guest and why? This one's a little bit of a spicy one. I believe this was episode 10, episode 9 or 10. It was the one on sleep. I did it with Dr. Jeff Dyke. I should say, I don't think this was him. It was me. I think it was because the show was still kind of early. I was getting used to conversing with people digitally. It was just a bit awkward. I didn't pull out information in a very concise and linear way. I listened back to an episode like that, and it feels very choppy, very awkward. That was probably so far my least. I definitely walked away from that one like, man, I gotta do something. That wasn't a good episode. And hopefully, I feel like I've improved along the way. And hopefully anybody listening the whole time also thinks the same thing. But that was probably my least favorite one. Next question. By the way, all the questions that I got for this episode, I got the most that I've ever gotten, and I got probably the best list of questions that I've ever gotten, which is awesome. Question 4 is, what is one bucket list goal that you simply won't settle on not achieving before you die? Traveling is something that I really would like to do more of. I need to intentionally do it. And travel is kind of one of those things where like I'm a homebody and I would rather not, but I always have enjoyed the traveling that I have done. And to be honest, I'm just not very well traveled. I would love to go visit Australia, and I would also love to go visit Japan. Those are two places that anybody that I speak to about when they get back from or have gone are like, it's the best places they've ever been. And I would really love to go visit those places. And I don't know if that's pretty non-specific, but just traveling more is something that I think I need to do before I die. I want to make sure I hit a lot of cool places on Earth in my life. Question 5, what is your biggest fear or phobia? And did it stem from something? This isn't really a specific fear or phobia, and I don't know if this stems from anything. I've always just been very shy, and I think I still maybe deal with some levels of social anxiety in person, especially if I'm, low on energy, have been doing it all day. I'll give you a good example. The gym that I coach at, we often, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, we'll do a bring a friend day where the athletes at the gym can bring a friend with them to work out. And I find that in days like that, where I'm kind of meeting people all day and I got to be on, I don't really like to do that. And as the day goes on, I tend to find myself, going into my shell and getting a little bit more shy as the day goes on. I think I'm good at talking to people as like a skill that I've developed, but I wouldn't really say that I like it. And yeah, I'll leave it there. Number 6 is, what is one common phrase or saying that you just really can't stand? This isn't really a phrase, but I hate it when people say that perfectionism keeps them from committing to doing things. Like, for example, when Cayman and I started this podcast, him and I are both perfectionists. And on the video side of things, I was kind of just telling him, hey man, like we just got to get this show rolling. Like, who cares if it's perfect? And he would tell me after a show, and I was like, dude, that sucked. I really have to improve. He would say, that wasn't that bad, man. Like, you're making progress. And so my point with that is, I think a lot of people in similar situations will say, I don't want to do this because I can't do it perfect. And I think that that's stupid, not because perfectionism is bad. I think it's a superpower, but I think people use it as an excuse not to do something. Because if you are actually a perfectionist, you might not want to do something, but your personality is such that there's simply nothing that you can do to not improve the thing. Like it's a agonizing toil that haunts you if it doesn't improve, and that kind of sucks at times. And I think a lot of times people are mistaking a lack of desire to do something difficult for a level of perfectionism. Like if you were a perfectionist, you would do everything in your power to fix the thing, even if it did suck. I also hate it when, this is a pet peeve of mine, when salespeople or people that have studied communication at some level incessantly use your name in a conversation. Like, hi, what's your name? Hi, my name is Joel. Nice to meet you. And then they just constantly use my name in the sentence. Like, Joel, how did this make you feel? Or like, oh yeah, Joel. Like nobody talks like that. And it's silly to try to force empathy. That's a big pet peeve of mine. Next question. Did you ever want to give up? And how did you overcome that feeling? Yes, I wanted to give up. All the time I wanted to give up. I still want to give up a lot. And here's how I get over that. So if you think about quitting, it's a relief from whatever pain you are in right now. And if you follow quitting to its logical conclusion and you just think about it a couple steps down the line from the immediate relief, it is that I'll give you a good example. If I quit the podcast, I will not have a podcast anymore. Sure, all the episodes that I did counted for something, yes, but I won't be consistently uploading a podcast. And I know already what that feels like, which is why I started the podcast. And it's because when I didn't have one, there was a void or a hole or a thing that I thought that I needed to fill. And so I made a podcast in order to fill that thing. And it has for sure. And so if I quit, I'll just be back in a place that I already know and I didn't like before. And sure, this sucks right now sometimes, having to do the research and scheduling the time and being pressed to get extra episodes in. But it's worth it to me because it's better than that empty hole. And again, I think if you fill that hole with something else and you shift focus and you quit whatever thing you're doing, but you move it to something else, that's great. But for me, that's been my dialogue in my head of, I want to quit. Well, I'll just be back where I was before, and I didn't like that place, so I have to keep going. What do you feel has improved about your interview style? I should say before I say this, I still need to work on this. I'm actively working on this. But the best thing that I've done for my interview style is slowing down and letting dead space breathe a little bit. I think I think that in general as a speaker, it's very easy to get frantic with your thoughts and your actions and the rate at which the syllables come out of your mouth. And I'm fortunate that I talk super fast because slowing down gets me to a normal rate. I think anybody who talks at a normal rate, or some people talk painfully slow, you don't want to slow down necessarily. But slowing down, number one, the words coming out of my mouth has helped me think more clearly. And also just taking a couple extra seconds to respond and letting dead space be has been insanely helpful for two reasons. Number one, I sound less like a moron. And number two, sometimes the guests will just fill that space on their own. You know, they're answering a question and then they finish, and then I'm kind of looking at the camera thinking, and then maybe they feel awkward and then they fill the space with something else and potentially an even more important aspect to the concept that they were just explaining. So I would say slowing down has been the most impactful on conducting interviews, especially digitally. It can be pretty hard. Again, still working on that, but that is the first thing that comes to my mind. Next question, share a goal for the next 52. So I've been giving a lot of thought to this about, what the path of trying to grow a podcast is. And I think it's this. Year number one, if you have a podcast, is about making sure that you upload a podcast every whatever interval you set for yourself for an entire year. We set the goal of doing one episode per week, and we've done that. That's literally the only thing you should worry about year one. I think that we have the benefit, Cayman and I do, of we've worked on this thing together. He has worked pretty hard on the video side of things. We recently shifted gears to, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm in a different room than we started in, but the quality is still there with the show, which is excellent, right? There's other things that we've worked on, but the main thing, like 80% of the thing, was getting to a a point where we could upload an episode every single week. Years 2 and 3, I really do believe, at least for me, are going to be more self-directed goals in terms of improving myself as a host. And the show will naturally grow a little bit more because of that. And so currently I'm working on my oration in the form of more accurate word choice. I was alluding to the dictionary stuff earlier. I was alluding to speaking slower and speaking more fluidly. I tend to do like a jumble of words at times, and I'll bounce around because I'm sort of thinking my way through a point out loud. And I would really like to dial that in so it sounds cleaner on the audio side of things. And I'm also actively aware that I have that as I have more conversations, rather, they will help me shape my worldview and my understanding of things and my knowledge base, which will improve what I say into the microphone. Because I especially feel like at times when I'm talking to people about current event, I feel ignorant sometimes to the topics that we're discussing. And as I get older, as I live more, as I talk to people more, I'll be more equipped to have these conversations firsthand. I still feel as though like I tell myself a lot, shut up, man, just ask the questions. That's what I'm here for. And I do think that's true. But eventually, as I add more things and develop myself, the show will also improve because of that. But two things, not just for the next year, but I think even the following year, speak better, speak more clearly, and then also just like develop my own knowledge base and understanding of the world. Question number 10, most eye-opening conversation. Mentioned this earlier. Phil Reed on social media addiction. That was episode 46, I think. It was one of the recent ones. And then Linda Hancock, we talked about mental health struggles and youth mental health struggles and the current age of emotion that we're living in. And I really appreciated that conversation. And then another honorable mention, I talked to Maria Candler about similar stuff, about the Enneagram. That was pretty cool too. 11, if you were to enter a talent show, what would your talent be? I can solve a Rubik's Cube. That would be my talent. Used to be able to do it in like 30 or 40 seconds when I was like 13. But I think I could probably do it in like a minute and a half now. This is the same question. What's on tap for year 2? Get better at talking, get better at thinking, get better at asking questions, grow the show. 4 goals. Question number 13. Why try to be a good person? This is pretty simple. I've come to this realization recently as the show has grown and I think about it on a regular basis. I just think that good people live good lives. And whether you are an artist or a business owner or an athlete or you work a 9-to-5 job, if you just try to improve yourself, you will make both yourself and the world around you a much better place. And so good people live good lives, and there's a million things that you can choose to do or actions you can take. But at the core of it, if you just work on improving yourself and getting better and being good, you will be happy. You will be fulfilled. You will live a good life. This is question 14. Where do you hope the show is in 3 to 5 years? I hope that the show is listened to by a bunch of people, of course, but I think more importantly, and this is a bit of a cliche answer, but it's true, I hope that in some capacity I am engaging in meaningful conversations that I enjoy having and that people enjoy listening to and learning from. Have been especially loving the shows that I get to speak with researchers and professors because I'm getting to learn about things that I don't know much about at all. And I think that, at least from an informational side of things, that's more productive. I get a lot of feedback from my friends in real life, and even my dad said this to me this past weekend, where he likes the episodes where I'm talking with my friends and we're just kind of shooting the shit. I love having those conversations, but I personally get more out of the informational things, and I think thinking long term as far as education goes, that will be the most productive way to spend a lot of this show. So I imagine we'll continue to have a good mix of these things, but I tend to enjoy those researchers and doctors a lot, and I hope I get to continue to have more of those types of conversations in the next 3 to 5 years. Do you like doing the podcast more or less since you started? By far more. By far more. I love doing the show. And honestly, it kind of was the same. I always enjoyed doing it, but I've really recognized in the last maybe 2 months that I love doing the show because anytime I sit down to reach out to a guest or read a research paper that I have to read before the show so I can ask appropriate questions, even though it does suck and I find myself procrastinating the act of doing the work, anytime that I get the research article pulled up and I'm reading through it and I'm trying to understand, the terminology and the way the research was conducted and the conclusion and the results that they came to, I tend to be actively thinking about how I enjoy that process. It feels good to me to be able to do what we're doing. And so, by far, I enjoy the show way more. When you start anything, I feel like the idea of it is cool. Like I've always wanted to have a podcast. The idea of that sounded awesome to me. But you don't actually know until you start doing the thing because you don't know if you're going to like the painful points of it. Like the research I was just describing, most people would hate that for whatever reason. It's the suck that I can do and I like it. And so I think that it's crazy that it took almost a year for me to come to that conclusion, but if that's a testament to anything, it's that give something a shot, stick it out, try to persevere through that, initial beginner phase. And after you do something for 6 to 12 months, I feel like you have a good understanding if it's something you could skip to or stick to. This is a funny question. If you could only do 5 exercises for the rest of your life, what would they be? This is just what I like. I wouldn't say this is quote unquote optimal, or what even is that optimal, but power clean, push press, back squat, pull up, and I'm going to assume that like cardio is also involved with this. So rucking, power clean, push press, back squat, pull ups, rucking. That's 5. That's what I would do. That kind of looks like what my training program is anyways. I just kind of do those things. Question number 17. What are you reading? Oh man. Okay. Kind of a lot's going on right now. I just finished Lightbringer, which is book 6 of the Red Rising series. By far my favorite sci-fi fantasy series. 10 out of 10 recommend. If you're looking for some fantasy books, read Red Rising. I just finished Get Married by Brad Wilcox. That is in preparation for a podcast episode on marriage that I'm having with Chris Bullivant soon. So be on the lookout for that. I just started reading The Alchemist, which is like a classic Brazilian, I believe it's Brazilian, by Paulo Coelho. I will likely finish that today. I started it yesterday. It's very short. I enjoy it. It's a like cute little read. And then I'm going to read Mothership next. I get that in the mail today. That's by Greg Wren. Greg was my guest on episode number 1. He was a poetry professor of mine when I was in college. If you are listening to the show and maybe even remember my episode with Greg, check out Mothership. I assume, I haven't read it, but I assume it's going to be a fantastic read. It's a memoir written by him. And, can't recommend looking into Greg's book enough. Can't recommend checking out our first episode. I didn't do a very good job, but he's wonderful. And I'm glad to know him. After that, I'm going to commit myself in the month of April. It'll probably take the whole month of April, maybe even a little bit longer. I'm going to read Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. So that's my current finished reads, just recently finished, what I'm currently working through, and then what I have on deck. I'm so excited to read Infinite Jest. It's been on my to be read list for a long time, but it's 1,000 pages and I have been putting it off. Question number 18. What's something people don't understand about self-improvement? Self-improvement is not getting ripped, taking cold plunges, eating optimally like liver and fruit all the time. It's just about educating yourself. Self-improvement is education. It's trying to improve the world and think and be better, right? It's it's the classic saying of like, before you can help yourself, before you can help others, you need to help yourself. That's what self-improvement's for. It's a vehicle to help other people to understand the world better, to understand your place in it. Our bodies and our minds and our souls are the lens that we view everything from. And you got to make sure that that is not just okay, but it's good. You need to make sure that you continue to develop it, because as you develop it, your ability to reach others will increase and improve. And I think that, if you ask anybody what it means to live a good life, helping other people at some point along the way is a part of that. Question number 19, how do you become wise? I'm trying to find that out. I'll say this. I always remember this. I probably won't ever forget it. My first philosophy professor that I had, I was 18. It was my first semester of college. I took a philosophy 101 class, and it was just on the history of philosophers, pretty general. Talked a lot about Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. But he defined philosophy as the love of wisdom. Philosophy equals love of wisdom. And he defined wisdom as the examined life. So in order to become wise, you have to, number one, live your life, but number two, examine it as you go. And if you sort of keep this fresh set of eyes on the idea that pursuing knowledge and improving and examining yourself and life, kind of what I mentioned before with, what's the point of self-improvement? If you just keep your eyes on that and sort of love the idea of improving, you will become wise as a byproduct of that. Keep examining your life. Don't settle for letting yourself slip into these habits and tendencies and look up 10 years later and wish you had done things differently, right? Constantly rein yourself in, take a look inward, make sure that you are living up to these expectations or standards rather that you've set for yourself, and just keep hammering away. It's a slow, tumultuous thing that happens over a lifetime, and just knowing that from the beginning helps you sort of buckle in and it will allow wisdom to be a byproduct of living regardless of what you decide to do. When's the last time you ate fast food? Oh man. And then the other part was, what was it? I honestly can't remember. This isn't me being like a super health nut guy that doesn't eat fast food. I just can't remember. Honestly, I think I had a Popeyes chicken sandwich maybe like 3 months ago. I could be lying. It could have been more recent. I just can't remember. We tend to eat out maybe like once every 2-3 weeks. And we usually go to like local restaurants. And so I don't remember the last time I had fast food. But if I had to, the last time I remember was Popeyes like 3 months ago. This is actually the last question. Are you going to write a book? So fun fact, when I was a senior in high school, in my yearbook, I won the superlative for most likely to write a bestseller, which is kind of funny. I would like to write a book. I write sporadically now. I do think that I will one day sort of come together with enough that I can build a book around an idea or a thing. I think I just need to live quite a bit longer so I have something to say. I've done quite a bit, especially for my age, but I don't know if I have the style of writing that I really enjoy is memoir and creative nonfiction, and I think I just need to live a lot longer before I decide to do that. Again, I do write. Sometimes I'll write poetry. Sometimes I'll write just like a short essay, or I start a lot of stuff and don't finish it. But it's just, as these creative things come to me, I try to put them down on paper, and maybe one day it'll turn into a project. I'm not sure. I'd like to write a book. I think everybody wants to write a book, and you don't really understand the kind of work that it takes. But I would like to, is my answer. Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of Good People. Thank you for sticking around with us for the first year of the show, and hopefully many more. If you guys are watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our weekly uploads. If you guys enjoy listening to the show every week, the best way that you can help us grow this thing is by sharing the episode with somebody who you think would enjoy it. We'll see you next time.